Yashodanandana Rajajanaranjana Yamunatira Manachari Yamunatira Manachari Hasta Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopichand Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandanam Rajajanaranjana Yamunatira Manachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopichanda Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandanam Rajajanaranjana Yamunatira Manachari Yamunatira Manachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsapad Jakacharya Ashtosh Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai ISKCON Samstapakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Seko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopal Gopinath Shyam Mukund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Navadviptam Ki Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. Glass of water. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading Canto 7, Chapter 1, Text 13. Atraimundareta Atraimundareta Purvam Itihasa Sarasina. Is that the right verse? Pritya Makato Rajan Prichate Jata Shatrabe Atrabudarita Purvam Itihasa Surasena Prityapmahakato Rajan Prichate Jata Shatrabe Atrabudarita Purvam Itihasa Surashina Pritamahakato Rajan Prichate Ajata Shatrave. Please chant. Achaivo Darita Purvam Itihasa Jata Shatrave Jaivodarita Purvam Vyasa Surashina Gritamaha Grito Rajan Prichate Jata Shatrave Jaivodarita Purvam Vyasa Surashina Grito Rajan Prichate Jata Shatrave Ajaivodarita Purvam Vyasa Surashina Pritamaha Rajan Prichate Jata Shatrave. Ladies, no. Atra. In this connection, Eva, certainly, Udarita, was recited. Purvam, previously. Itihasa, an old story. Sudarshana, by the great sage Narada. Pritya, with joy. Mahakrato, at the great Rajasuya sacrifice. Rajan, O king, Prichate, to the inquiring, Ajata Shatrabe, Maharaj Yudhishthir, who had no enemy, Translation. Formerly, O king, when Maharaj Yudhishthir was performing the Rajasuya sacrifice, the great sage Narada, responding to his inquiry, recited historical facts showing how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always impartial, even when killing demons. In this regard, he gave a vivid example. Purport. This relates to how the Lord exhibited his impartiality even when killing Shishupal in the arena of the Rajasuya Yajna performed by Maharaj Yudhishthir. Om Jnanatimarandasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshashun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishnam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Mandeham Shri Guru Shri Taparakamanam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadbetam Savatutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Brindavanishpadi Vishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Atraivadarita Purvam Itihasa Surashena Pityamahakrato Rajan Pichate Jatashatrave. This is a statement by Shukadev Goswami. He's addressing Parikshit, the king, and he's now going to elaborate on the idea that Krishna is impartial. And he'll do this by telling a story, an old story, he says. Historical account how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always impartial, even when killing demons. Part of Krishna's impartiality that we've already discussed is that the demons that are killed are not sent to hell, which is normally where demons live. in hellish conditions. But because of their being killed by Krishna, they're sanctified. And thereafter they dwell in an elevated position. Maybe they are dwelling in the Brahman impersonally. Or in this case, Shishupal ends up merging with the body of Krishna. So this is what's going to be discussed in this section. There's about 7 verses here that all have to do with Shukadev introducing this description of the Lord's impartiality. Those of us who have read the Krishna book or the 10th canto have already heard about the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was the person who was supposed to inherit the throne. He was the son of Maharaj Pandu. But there was a great intrigue because Pandu died when Maharaj Yudhishthira was a boy. You can't put a child on the throne. So for the time being, Dhritarashtra, the brother of Pandu, took over the monarchy. And his sons, who were envious of the what do you call it? The person who's the heir to the throne. There's a word for it. That was Yudhishthira, the heir to the throne. But the sons of Dhritarashtra were envious of him. Although they were cousins, it was a family. So as the years went by and Yudhishthira grew up, before he was old enough to rule, the sons of Dhritarashtra manipulated their way into running the government with the help of their uncle Dhritarashtra, their father Dhritarashtra. So then the battle of Kurukshetra took place and they were defeated and Yudhishthira was victorious. So part of the victory was to observe the Rajasuya Yajna. And at that time, Shishupal blasphemed Krishna. And it just had to do with Krishna being honored at the Rajasuya sacrifice. It was, in a sense, it was not a big deal. But Shishupal, he was envious that Krishna would be the person to be honored. And he spoke out against Krishna. He called him names. He denigrated him. And this is what he had been doing his whole life. Ever since he was born, what was with Shishupal? Why was he like this? Well, because he was a special associate of Lord Vishnu named Jai, and he and his other associate Vijay, they had to take 3 births as demons. But they were under the special protection of Vishnu. Vishnu wanted to fight. He has the propensity to fight, but he doesn't fight anyone in the spiritual world. So he conducts his fighting in the material world. And he arranged that Jai and Vijay would be his competitors, his enemies. For 3 births, they had to take 3 births. So Shishupal and his brother Dantavakra, they were Jai and Vijay. Previously, they had been Hiranyakasipu and Hiranyaksha. So it was a special rasa that Shishupal had with Krishna. And therefore, something wonderful happened at the time that Shishupal was killed. It's explained here how this struck Yudhisthira with wonder. And therefore, Yudhisthira asked about the reason for this from the great sage Narada, who was also seated at the Rajasuya sacrifice. And while he asked this question, the sages who were present also heard him ask his question. This is explained in texts 14 and 15. After seeing this Mahabhutam, something very wonderful, Shishupal merging into the body of Krishna. Of course, that doesn't mean the body of Shishupal. That means the soul of Shishupal was seen to come out of his body that was killed by Krishna. Krishna decapitated him with his disc, cut off his head right in the assembly. And then the soul of Shishupal came out and merged with the body of Krishna. So this is described in 14. Mahadabhutam, greatly wonderful. We use that word adbhutam in our Nishinga prayers. How does that go? Adbhuta Shringham, wonderful Nishinga. So we're looking at the Rajasuya sacrifice and Krishna's body and the soul of Shishupal merging into the Krishna. So Yudhishthir, the son of Pandu, Pandu Sutta, Sutta means son, Pandu Sutta, another name for Yudhishthir. At that time he asked Narada, in the presence of the sages who were listening, Shrinvatam, they were listening, what's going on? Yudhishthir is asking a question. So here Shukadev then tells the King Parikshit, Yudhishthir asked, it's very wonderful that the demon Shishupal merged into the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even though Shishupal was extremely envious of Krishna, what he did is called Sayuja Mukti. Mukti means liberation. Sayuja means becoming one. That's a difficult attainment. It's described by Shukadev. This Sayuja Mukti is impossible to attain even for great transcendentalists. How then did the Lord's enemy attain it? Everyone saw this happening and they thought this accomplishment is very rare for transcendentalists. The purport to this text 16 explains there are two classes of transcendentalists: the Jnanis and the Bhaktas. The Bhaktas do not aspire to merge into the existence of the Lord, but the Jnanis do. The Jnanis think of the Supreme as Brahman, the impersonal, effulgence of the Lord. The Lord has a bright effulgence, and that's called the Brahman. And the Jnanis think that merging into that effulgence, that spiritual light coming from the Lord, that is the goal. Shishupal wasn't a Gyani. He didn't do the practice of trying that leads. He didn't try like a Gyani to achieve that level of existence of merging into Brahman, the effulgence of the Lord. But he wasn't a bhakta either. But he was simply envious of the Lord. But it's amazing that just by his envy, by his thinking of Krishna in an envious rasa, he attained an exalted position by merging into the Lord's body. This was astonishing. And therefore Maharaj Yudhisthira asked about the cause. What's the cause of this mercy that Shishupal got? So this is continued there. One more verse. Text 17. Etad veditum ichama sarva eva vayam manu bhagavanindaya veno vijayastamasi patita. We desire to know, all of us, also all the sages, we want to know, we're eager to know this is Yudhisthira speaking to Narad Muni. O great sage, we are all eager to know the cause for this mercy of the Lord. I've heard that formerly a king named Vena blasphemed the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that all the Brahmins consequently obliged him to go to hell. Shishupal should also have been sent to hell. How then did he merge into the Lord's existence? Text 18. From the very beginning of his childhood, when he could not even speak properly, Shishupal, the most sinful son of Dhamaghosh, began blaspheming the Lord. So even as a child, he couldn't really speak coherently. So his speech was unclear. But even with that speech, that level of speaking, he was blaspheming Krishna because he was so envious. And he continued to be envious of Krishna until death. Similarly, his brother Dantavakra continued the same habits. So this is a pastime of Krishna. Jai and Vijay are Shishupal and Dantavakra. So it's like a drama. They're playing the parts of evil, envious demons. Next verse, 19. Although these two men, Shishupal and Dantavakra, repeatedly blasphemed the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, Krishna, the Supreme Brahman, they were quite healthy. Indeed, their tongues were not attacked by white leprosy. Is this on the screen? It's not. That's okay. You don't have to. If you don't have it there, it's okay. I was just asking if it's there. Their tongues were not attacked by white leprosy, nor did they enter the darkest region of hellish life. We are certainly most surprised by this. Purport: Krishna is described by Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 12, as follows. Param Brahma param dam pavitram paramam bhavan. Param Brahma param dam pavitram paramam bhavan. You are the supreme Brahman, the supreme abode and supreme purifier. Herein this is confirmed. Vishnum yat Brahma paramavyayam. The supreme Vishnu is Krishna. Krishna is the cause of Vishnu, not vice versa, not that Vishnu is the cause of Krishna. Similarly, Brahman is not the cause of Krishna. Krishna is the cause of Brahman. Therefore, Krishna is the Para-Brahman. Yat Brahma Paramamamyayam. Text 20. How is it possible for Shishupal and Dantavakra, in the presence of many exalted persons, to enter very easily into the body of Krishna, whose nature is difficult to attain? Of course, the answer that is going to be given is that Krishna's impartial, and when he kills these associates who are playing the part of demons, they attain the Sayuja Mukti. They enter very easily into the body of Krishna. That's his mercy upon them. Purport. Shishupal and Dantavakra were formerly Jai and Vijay, the doorkeepers of Vaikuntha. Merging into the body of Krishna was not their final destination. For some time they remained merged, and later they received the liberations of Sarupya and Salokya, living on the same planet of the Lord, in the same bodily form. The Shastras give evidence that if one blasphemes the Supreme Lord, his punishment is to remain in hellish life for many millions of years, more than one suffers by killing many Brahmins. Shishupal, however, instead of entering hellish life immediately and very easily received Sayuja Mukti. That such a privilege had been offered to Shishupal was not merely a story. Everyone saw it happen. There was no scarcity of evidence. And how did it happen? Maharaj Yudhisthira was very much surprised. Text 21. This matter is undoubtedly very wonderful. Indeed, my intelligence has become disturbed just as the flame of a candle is disturbed by a blowing wind. O Narad Muni, you know everything. Kindly let me know the cause of this wonderful event. The Shastras enjoin tad vignanartam sagurum eva bhigachet. Shishikoda Nitai Mayas Purushashi Srila Prabhupada. There is some writing on Nityananda's chadar. I just saw the word Vamana. And what else? Matsya. Interesting. He does. Oh yes, in the reddish border. So you have to read the close. After class you have to go up and read the close. So Prabhupada explains something about the inquiry here by Maharaj Yudhisthira. He says the Shastras enjoin tad vignanartam sagurun eva bhigachet. When one is perplexed by the difficult problems of life, to solve them, one must approach a guru like Narada or his representative in the disciplic succession. Mars Yudhisthira therefore requested Narada to explain the cause for such a wonderful event. We're just here on one hill in the area. There's several hills. There's even a mountain. And on this hill, we're talking about Krishna. And we're thinking that in the future, people living on all the other hills, they'll also know about Krishna, because Krishna consciousness will be spread by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. It's not difficult to be Krishna conscious. You just have to use your ears and hear. You have to hear the Shastra, the scriptures, what they're talking about. They're talking about Krishna. It's not like the newspaper. The newspaper will talk about politicians and criminals and celebrities, and the Shastras recorded the pastimes of the Lord, and the sages go into the pastimes. Why? Because Krishna is so important to understand. Krishna is related to everything because everything comes from Krishna. So we have to hear how everything is related to the Lord, and then we can live with everything adjusted to pleasing Krishna. That's not the goal of the people in the material world. The people in the material world want to be like God. They want to have everything arranged for their pleasure, for their enjoyment. And we have this tendency because we are embodied in a temporary body. And Srila Prabhupada wants us to learn how to process our experience. You were using the word process yesterday. We want to process our experience in such a way that we harmonize with Krishna. That will make our life spiritual and happy. So the narration that we're reading about and everything in the Bhagavatam is written about a time when people were in the proximity of Krishna, when he appeared, either in one incarnation or another incarnation, or at the time of creation. Nowadays, people accept various versions of the creation. There's even a scientific version. I was discussing this yesterday with Gora, He's 13 years old. And he was talking, he has an interest in physics. He's already reading books about physics. And he said the scientific version of the Big Bang actually refers to the time when the little undeveloped universe that we're in comes out from Mahavishnu, either through his breathing or through the pores of his body, the universes. This is how Mahavishnu is creating his line on the causal ocean in a slumber, and the dream of Mahavishnu creates the universes. According to the authorities who are writing these books, Lord Brahma comes out as the first person in the universe. And then he does some austerity, and Krishna reveals himself to Lord Brahma. And he gives them the blueprints, how to create the universe. Brahma's just the engineer. He doesn't create all the materials, the elements. Those are created. That's the Mahatattva. That includes the Mahatattva includes the ether. The ether is the subtle form of matter. We don't see the air. Air is even subtle. Ether is the most subtle. Air is subtle. We don't see the mind. The mind is another element of creation. But we all know we have minds. So this version of creation, the reason I'm mentioning this is because it's found in the Bhagavatam. And where's the Bhagavatam found? In Vedic culture. And where's Vedic culture found? In India. So the people in India who are cultured and educated in the spiritual life of India, they know about these topics. And they have a good laugh at the modern Westerners who say that man evolved from the apes, and the earliest men were just dressed in some animal skins and lived in caves, and they killed animals with their clubs and survived in that way. These accounts of primitive people as being the descendants of apes who evolved somehow into human beings. It's quite a laughing matter for someone who is acquainted with the creation that's described in the Bhagavatam. Jalangi and Tulsi and Gandhiki, welcome. There's another, there's the Bible explains creation. Prabhupada knew a little bit about reading the Bible. As a college student, he was taking Bible classes. And he sometimes explained the creation account that's given in the Bible in line with the Bhagavatam. There's another account also in Plato's books. Plato wrote a book about creation. And there's a parallel, a lot of parallels. You could say almost it's a reflection, a mirror image of the creation account in the Bhagavatam. I wrote an article about this for Back to Godhead. I always wanted to go to Athens when I was in Southern Europe. I would visit Italy and Slovenia. And if you just go south on that part of Europe, you come down to Greece. So I eventually arranged to go to visit the devotees in Athens. And then one of the things I did there is I read Plato's account of creation. And Plato says the same thing about the creation. He said that there was a original creator. He doesn't call him Brahma, but he has the same function and position as Brahma. He receives information about how to create from a transcendental source, which is left impersonally described, but it's not personally described as the Supreme Lord. But Plato says there was a transcendental source for this first creator's knowledge. And the information he received was that for each kind of living entity, for each member of the species of living entities, there was a prototype that exists eternally. The idea of a cow or the idea of a human being. These things eternally exist. And the creator simply has to copy from those primordial forms. He has to create based on those primordial forms. He creates the varieties of species in this world. So those plans, those original blueprints, those are called the Vedas. Those are revealed to Brahma. And that kind of scenario is given both in the Bhagavatam and in Plato. And it's interesting because Plato's account is non-biblical. It's not the biblical account. It's a different account. And it was present in Greece, like 300 years BC. And according to the Bhagavatam, the people in Greece and people in Asia Minor, they were coming from the side of India. They were persons who fled India, who were driven out of India by one of the incarnations of Krishna called Parshuram. He declared war on the Kshatriyas, the warrior classes of India. And they fled. Some of them fled to Asia Minor. And they brought with them their ideas of demigods. Therefore, in Athens, you had the idea that Athena was the demigoddess who was the deity of Athens. They had a temple for her, the Parthenon, that temple on the hill, the Parthenon, beautiful architecture. That was Athena's temple. And she was a goddess. She was a virgin. Parthenon actually means the virgin, and it was her temple. So I was interested in seeing that, and I bought a book about how the Parthenon was built. The archaeologists have described where the marble came from. The marble was taken from a quarry. It had to be transported. And then it was carved in such an elegant way. The archaeologists wonder how could they have had the tools to do this carving? It's such excellent carving. They must have had really super good tools. And the transportation of the marble and the carving, this all took place within a matter of years. It was done almost so quickly that they don't think it could be done so quickly today, even with modern methods of transporting, trucking, and so on. It's just an amazing wonder of the world. So at some point, there's some evidence that at some point earlier, civilization was on a higher level than we think. It wasn't primitive. Any comments or questions? Yes. Yeah, it's not that everybody gets the same privilege as Sishupal. So they end up, as it was we read, they end up maybe for millions of years in a hellish condition. Some of the demons. Kind of a bad place to go. But that's described even, hell is described in Western literature. Dante, did you read the Divine Comedy? Dante describes the inferno. A great masterpiece of literature. And the Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, describes hellish planets. So the mercy for the demons comes in the form of some punishment. That's a kind of mercy given by the material world. You have to accept the karma, the reactions for your bad activities. You can't create a lot of evil and then expect that you can go unpunished. If you're violating the laws of the government and the government catches you, they're not going to say, well, that's okay, but you're subjected to punishment and confinement. Yes. Ignorance is no excuse, the lawyers say. Ignorance of the law is no excuse for breaking the law. Your duty as a member of human society is to find out what the laws are. And that includes the laws of morality, the laws that come from God. So if you're ignorant of the laws, you figure it out. You ask somebody, what's going on here? What do I do to stay out of trouble? But if you're a criminal, then you think, what are the laws? Let me find out how I can break them. Let me find out how I can take advantage of society. And by my criminal activity, I'll amass some advantages. Did you hear about the person who stole from the museums of Europe as many art treasures as he could? There's a new book that has come out about this man. He was a Frenchman, and he just had a thing. He was a kleptomaniac, and he had a girlfriend who helped him. She would be in the museum with him, and if the guards were coming, then she would cough or something to signal to the thief, here comes the guard. And the thief figured out how to avoid the cameras. For example, if he knew the camera was up there, he would do his thievery with his back to the camera so that all the camera saw was his back, and he would break into maybe a case and take something from the glass case. The book goes into the details about how he committed each of his crimes. And all he did was he took all these art treasures to his apartment. He lived in the home of his mother in the attic, and he kept all the art treasures that he took there. And that was it until he got caught. So for some people, that makes life worth living, to violate the laws and get around the. At one point, he saw in one of the glass cases, he saw a folded note card that said, "These objects are removed for study." There was a museum sign that was put there in the place where normally some art treasure was. These objects are removed for study. So the thief, took that card, and then he put that card in the next case where he stole stuff from. So people really take advantage, people who are influenced by the mind's bad qualities. All the bad qualities are in the mind. Greediness, enviousness, lust, all these things that turn us into little demons are in the mind. So controlling the mind is a really important part of human life. Ashish. Well, it's like, you're asking a question about like a telephone company, for example, has to keep track of everybody's phone calls, right? They keep score, how much time you used on your telephone, how much we're going to charge you for this, how much, right? The telephone company has a way of that's all figured out. So similarly, Yamaraj karma is figured out by Yamaraj and his assistants. And they're the experts. So they figure that stuff out. And the higher authorities then award different bodies. You get a chance maybe to redeem yourself in another life, of course. It's a big system. Is that okay? Any other thing? Yes, sir. Ah, no, he's transcendental to the activities of the gunas. The bang is the mode of passion, but he's still sleeping. He expands. His expansion is aware of it, right? He expands, enters into the atoms, so his expansion knows. And then this little Gora, this 13-year-old Gora, him, Ramana, he was explaining to me, then the universe contracts according to the Big Bang Theory after the universe expands. At some point it contracts. And he was saying that this is also described in the Bhagavatam. Expansion, contraction, destruction, mode of ignorance. Lord Shiva arranges the Gora's going to go to school I think in next year, the last 2 years of high school, he's going to attend a regular school. He's been homeschooled up till now. Then he wants to go into to Cambridge. He's got his goal set on Cambridge because so many scientists have come from Cambridge. And you talk to him, it's just like, well, his plan is so well formed. He's got, it's amazing. 13 years old. He's got his life planned out for the next 10 years. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. All glories to Prabhupada.